Huainanzi Chapter 12. 12.1 Grand Purity asked Inexhaustible, "Do you know the way?" Inexhaustible responded, "I don't know it." Grand Purity then asked Non-Action, "Do you know the way?" Non-Action replied, "I know it." Grand Purity said, "Does this way that you know have norms?" One Non-Action responded, "Yes, the way that I know has norms." Grand Purity inquired, "What are the norms, then?" Non-Action responded, "The way that I know can be weak or strong, it can be soft or hard, it can be yin or yang, it can be dark or bright, it can embrace or contain heaven and earth, it can respond to or await the limitless. These are the norms by which I know the way." 12/105/3, 7 Grand Purity then asked Non-Beginning, "Earlier, I asked Inexhaustible about the way and Inexhaustible replied, 'I don't know it.' I then asked Non-Action and Non-Action responded, 'I know it.' So I asked him, 'Does this way that you know have norms?' Non-Action then responded, 'Yes, the way that I know has norms.' When I asked him whether he could name the norms, he responded, 'I know that the way can be weak or strong, it can be soft or hard, it can be yin or yang, it can be dark or bright, it can embrace or contain heaven and earth, it can respond to or await the limitless. These are the norms by which I know the way.' This being so, between Inexhaustible's not knowing and Non-Action's knowing, which is right and which is wrong? Non-Beginning answered, "Not knowing it is deep while knowing it is shallow, not knowing it is internal while knowing it is external, not knowing it is refined while knowing it is coarse." Grand Purity then gazed up at the heavens and said with a long sigh, "Then is not knowing, in fact, knowing? And is knowing, in fact, not knowing? Who knows that knowing it is not knowing and that not knowing it is knowing?" Non-Beginning responded, "The way cannot be heard, for what is heard is not the way cannot be seen, for what is seen is not the way cannot be spoken, for what is spoken is not the way. Who knows the formlessness of what gives form to form?" 2 Therefore the Laozi says, "When all the world recognizes good as good, there is ill." 3 Therefore those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know. 412/105/9, 1812.2 The Duke of Bo asked Confucius, "Is it possible for people to share subtle words?" 5 Confucius did not respond. The Duke of Bo asked again, "Isn't it like throwing stones into the water?" Confucius replied, "Skilled divers from Wu An you could retrieve them. Then perhaps it is like throwing water into water?" The Duke of Bo asked. Confucius replied, "When the waters of the Zi and Sheng rivers were blended together, Yi tasted the water and recognized which was which. The Duke of Bo responded, "Then is it not the case that people certainly cannot transmit subtle words? Why consider it impossible?" Asked Confucius. "But it is possible only for those who really know to what words refer. Now those who know to what words refer do not rely on words to speak. Fishermen get wet and hunters chase after their prey, but not because they like to do so. Therefore, the best words reject words altogether, and the best acts are devoid of action. What those of shallow knowledge squabble over is inconsequential." The Duke of Bo did not grasp Confucius's meaning and consequently died in a bathhouse. 6 Therefore the Laozi says, "Words have an ancestor and affairs have a sovereign." It is only because people lack this knowledge that they fail to understand me. 7 These words describe the Duke of Bo. 12/105/20, 26 Huaizi drafted the state laws on behalf of King Hui of Wei. 8 When he had completed them, he showed them to the elders, 9 all of whom praised them. He then submitted them to King Hui. King Hui was elated by them and showed them to Zijian. 10 Zijian exclaimed, "Excellent." King Hui inquired, "Since they are excellent, can we implement them?" Zijian responded, "We cannot." King Hui then asked, "If they are excellent, why can we not implement them?" Zijian answered, "Now take those who haul heavy logs, those in front call, heave. 11 While those behind respond, ho. This is a chant to encourage the strength of those who haul heavy loads. Could it really be that they do not know either the melodies of Zheng and Wei or the tune called Whirling Chu? Although they know such melodies, they do not use them because they do not suit the circumstance as well as this chant does. Governing a state is a matter of ritual and not a matter of literary eloquence. 12 Therefore the Laozi says, the more detailed the laws and edicts, the more thieves and robbers there are. 13 This is what is meant here. 12/106/1, 612.4 TNPN 14 offered a persuasion on the techniques of the way to the king of Qi, whereupon the king of Qi responded to Tianpian, what I possess is the state of Qi. The techniques of the way are difficult to rely on to eradicate its troubles. I would much rather hear about governing the state of Qi. Tianpian replied, my words said nothing about governing, but they may be used to create governing. My words may be compared to trees in a forest. They are not lumber, but they may be used to create lumber. I implore your majesty to investigate what has been said and then extrapolate from that the means to govern Qi. Although my persuasion might not eradicate the troubles of Qi, it can alter and transform what lies between heaven and earth and what is within the 6 coordinates. How can it suffice for your majesty to ask only about the governance of Qi? 15 This is what Lao Dan referred to as a shape without a shape of its own, a form without an object of its own. 16 What the king asked about was Qi, and Tianpian made an analogy to lumber. Now, the lumber is not so important as the forest is not so important as the rain is not so important as yin and yang are not so important as harmony, and harmony is not so important as the way. 12/106/8, 1312.5 When the Duke of Bo won possession of the state of Jing i.e., Chu, he could not bring himself to distribute among the people the grain kept in the storehouses. On the 7th day after the conquest, Shi Qi 17 entered the capital and said to the Duke of Bo, you obtained this wealth through unrighteous means. Moreover, you could not bring yourself to share it. Calamity is sure to arrive. If you are incapable of giving this wealth to the people, it would be best to burn it so as not to give them cause to harm us. The Duke of Bo did not heed his advice. On the 9th day after the conquest, the Duke of Shi 18 entered the capital. He brought out the goods from the supreme storehouse in order to distribute them to the multitudes. He then removed the weapons from the lofty repository in order to distribute them to the common people. Thereafter he attacked the Duke of Bo, and on the 19th day after the conquest he captured him. To desire the state when one does not yet possess it may be called the utmost avarice. To be incapable of acting on behalf of others, not to mention being incapable of acting on behalf of oneself, may be called utmost foolishness. How is the Duke of Bo's stinginess any different from the cannibal owl's love for its offspring? 19 Therefore the Laozi says, rather than holding it upright and filling it to the brim, better to have stopped in time. 20 Hammer it to a point, and the sharpness cannot be preserved forever. 2112/106/15 2012.6 When Viscount Jian of Zhao selected Viscount Xiang as his successor, Dong Nu 22 asked, Wu Xie is of humble origins, why did you select him as your successor? Viscount Jian replied, it was on account of the type of person he is. He is someone capable of enduring humiliation for the sake of the altars of soil and grain. On another day Earl Ji and Viscount Xiang were drinking wine together when Earl Ji knocked Viscount Xiang on the head. The great ministers suggested that Earl Ji should be executed for this, but Viscount Xiang replied, when the former ruler appointed me, he said that I was a man who was capable of enduring humiliation for the sake of the altars of soil and grain. Did he say that I was a man capable of murdering another man? Viscount Xiang had been in office for 10 months when Earl Ji besieged him at Jinyang. Viscount Xiang dispatched a small force that attacked Earl Ji and soundly defeated him. He split Earl Ji's skull 23 and made a drinking vessel from it. Therefore the Laozi says, know the male but keep to the role of the female and be a ravine for the world. 2412/106/22, 2612.7 Gaptooth asked Ragbag about the way. Ragbag replied, straighten your body, focus your gaze, and heaven's harmony will arrive. Concentrate your perception, straighten your posture, and the spirit will come to take up its abode. 25 Potency will beautify you, and the way will reside in you. You will be naive as a newborn calf who does not seek out the reason for it. Before Ragbag had finished speaking, Gaptooth fell into a deep sleep, having become a companion to the infinite. Ragbag broke out in song and went away singing, his form is like a withered carcass, his mind is like dead ashes. He authenticates his true knowledge but does not rely on precedent to grasp it by himself. Obscure and dim, he has no mind with which to scheme. What a man he is! 26 Therefore the Laozi says, when your discernment illuminates the four quarters, can you do so without relying on knowledge? 2712/106/2812/107/412.8 Viscount Xiang of Zhao dispatched an attacking force against the barbarian state of D and defeated it. When the inhabitants of the two cities of Zhou and Zhone had been captured, a messenger arrived to report the victory to Viscount Xiang, who was just about to eat his meal. When Viscount Xiang heard the news, an anxious expression appeared on his face. His attendants asked, capturing two cities in one morning is a cause for celebration. Why, then, do you appear so anxious? Viscount Xiang replied, the swelling of the Yangtze and Yellow rivers does not last more than 3 days, wild winds and violent rains do not last a morning. 28 The sun at high noon lasts for less than a moment. Now the virtuous conduct of the Zhao clan has not yet amounted to anything, and yet in one morning 2 cities have been captured. Our demise is imminent. When Confucius heard about this, he said, the Zhao clan will surely prosper. Anxiety leads to prosperity, happiness leads to ruin. Winning is not difficult, but preserving victory presents real challenges. The worthy ruler relies on his sense of anxiety to preserve victory, and so his good fortune extends to his descendants. The states of Qi, Chu, Wu, and Yu all were victorious for a time, yet eventually their rulers were captured and ruined because they did not understand how to preserve victory. Only the ruler who possesses the way can preserve victory. Confucius had enough strength to draw back the bolted gate of the capital, but he did not want to become known for his strength. Mozi engaged in defensive warfare that forced Gongshaban to submit to him, yet Mozi did not want to be known as a warrior. Those who are skilled at preserving victory consider their strength as weakness. 29 Therefore the Laozi says, the way is empty, yet when you use it, you need not refill it. 3012/107/6, 1412.9 Huaiang 31 had an audience with King Kong of Song. 32 Stamping his feet and clearing his throat impatiently, King Kong replied hastily, I am persuaded by courage and strength. I am not persuaded by humaneness and rightness. What could you possibly have to teach me? Huaiang replied, I possess a way that goes to this point. It can cause people, however courageous, never to penetrate when they stab and, however strong, never to hit the mark when they strike. Could your majesty really not be interested in this? King Kong of Song replied, excellent. These are indeed matters that I want to hear about. Huaiang continued, stabbing but not penetrating and striking but not hitting the mark is nevertheless still an insult. I possess a way that goes to this further point. It can cause courageous men not to dare to stab you and strong men not to dare to strike you. Still, not daring to stab you and not daring to attack you is not the same as lacking the intention to do so. I possess a way that goes to this further point. It can cause men to lack such intentions altogether. Still, lacking such intentions is not the same as wanting to love and benefit you. I possess a way that goes to this further point. It can cause every grown man and woman in the world without fail to have it in their hearts to love you ardently and wish to benefit you. This is worthier than courage and strength and is the top of the pile of the 4 ways I have just mentioned. Could your majesty really not be interested in this? King Kong of Song replied, these are indeed matters that I want to understand. Huainan responded, Kong i.e., Kong Chiu, Confucius, and Mo i.e., Mo Di, Mozi exemplify this way. Kong Chiu and Mo Di possessed no territory yet were treated as rulers, had no officials in their service yet were treated as chief ministers. Without fail, every grown man and woman in the world craned their necks and stood on tiptoe, 33 wanting to secure their safety and benefit. Now your majesty is a ruler of a state possessing 10,000 chariots. If you were to sincerely manifest the will of such men, then everyone within the borders of your state would enjoy the benefits. In that case, your majesty's worthiness would far exceed that of Kong or Mo. The king of Song had nothing to say in response. When Huainan departed, the king of Song commented to his attendants, what eloquence! This guest has won me over with his persuasion. 34 Therefore the Laozi says, one who is fearless in being bold will die, one who is fearless in being timid will live. 35 Looking at the matter from this perspective, great courage paradoxically consists of nothing other than timidity. 12/107/16, 12/108/312.10 In ancient times, Yao's assistants numbered 9, those of Shun numbered 7, and those of King Wu numbered 5. Yao, Shun, and Wu were not as capable as those 9, 7, and 5 assistants in any single task, and yet with hanging robes and folded hands, they achieved perfect merit because they excelled at availing themselves of the natural abilities of others. 36 Thus, if a man tries to outrun a thoroughbred, he will not beat the thoroughbred. But if he relies on the use of a chariot, the thoroughbred will not be able to beat him. In the northern regions there is an animal called the stumbler. It has 4 legs that resemble those of a rat and hind legs that resemble those of a hare. When it runs it tumbles forward, and when it walks it falls backward, but it always picks out the sweet grasses to give to the creature called the fabulous big and small. Whenever the stumbler encounters danger or harm, the fabulous big and small invariably carries it on its back to safety. This exemplifies the principle of relying on one's capabilities to supplement what is beyond one's capabilities. 37 Therefore the Laozi says, those who carve wood in place of the master carpenter rarely fail to hurt their hands. 38 12/108/5, 921.11 Boyi 39 offered a persuasion on the techniques of kingship to Lord Si of Wei. 40 Lord Si replied, I possess a state of only 1,000 chariots. I wish to receive the appropriate instruction. 41 Barrio Yi answered, Wu Huo could lift 1,000 jun, so he certainly could lift a single jin. 42 Du He 43 offered a persuasion to Lord Zaoan of Zhou 44 on the means to pacify the world. Lord Zaoan replied to Du He, I would like to learn how to pacify the state of Zhou. Du He responded, if what I say is unacceptable i.e., incorrect, then you will not be able to pacify Zhou. If what I say is acceptable i.e., correct, then Zhou will pacify itself. This is what is meant by the expression pacify it by not pacifying it. 45 Therefore the Laozi says, great handiwork does not involve cutting. 46 Therefore, if you fully count the pieces of a carriage, there is no longer a carriage. 47 12/108/11, 1512.12 According to the laws of the state of Lu, if a native of Lu is captured by another lord of the land as a servant or a concubine, and if there is someone who is able to ransom the captive, that person will be reimbursed from the state treasury. Zigong ransomed a native of Lu from a lord of the land, but when the ransomed party returned to Lu, Zigong declined and did not accept reimbursement. Confucius heard of the matter and said, Si 48 has committed an error. When sages initiate undertakings, they are able to shift with prevailing habits to change local customs. Their teachings and instructions can be applied by future generations. It is not the case that they suit their personal conduct alone. 49 Now the wealthy of Lu are few, but the poor are numerous. Ransoming others and receiving recompense is not the most honorable practice, but if no reimbursement is received, no one will ever again ransom others. And henceforth the people of Lu might never again redeem others from the lords of the land. It may indeed be said that Confucius understood how to transform others. 50 Therefore the Laozi says, to notice the details is called discernment. 5112/108/17, 2112.13 Marquis Wu of Wei asked Li Ke, 52 Why did the state of Wu perish? Li Ke responded, countless battles and countless victories. Marquis Wu retorted, but countless battles and countless victories are the good fortune of the state and its ruling family. How could such things be the sole cause of Wu's downfall? Li Ke replied, with countless battles, the populace grows exhausted, with countless victories, the ruler grows arrogant. Rare indeed is the state that does not perish when an arrogant ruler governs an exhausted populace. Arrogance leads to recklessness, and recklessness depletes material resources. Exhaustion leads to resentment, and resentment drives the people to their wits' end. Given that both superior and subordinate were depleted, the demise of Wu appears to have occurred rather late. This is why King Fuke of Wu took his life at the Battle of Gansui. 53 Therefore the Laozi says, to withdraw when merit is achieved and reputation established is the way of heaven. 5412/108/23, 2712.14 Ning Chi hoped to seek office from Duke Huan of Qi. But being poverty-stricken he had no means to have himself recommended. Consequently he made his way to Qi by driving a cart laden with goods for a traveling merchant. When night descended, he took up lodging outside the city gate. Just at that time Duke Huan of Qi was traveling to the suburbs to welcome guests, so that when night fell, he ordered the gate to be opened and the cart drivers removed from the road. His lighted torches filled the night sky, while those who followed him collected in a great throng. Meanwhile Ning Qi sat under his cart, feeding his ox and gazing despondently at Duke Huan. Tapping on his ox's horn he wailed out a tune composed in the Shanqi. When Duke Huan heard it, he clutched his charioteer's hand and said, "How extraordinary! Surely the singer is no ordinary man." Duke Huan then ordered a rear carriage to bring him along with his entourage. When Duke Huan returned to his court, his followers asked him what he wished to do. Duke Huan honored Ning Qi with a robe and cap and granted him an audience. During the audience, Ning Qi offered a persuasion for governing the world. Duke Huan was elated by the persuasion and was about to appoint Ning Qi to an official post when his ministers objected, saying, "Our guest is a person from Wei. Wei is not far from Qi. It would be best if you sent someone to inquire about him. If you find that Ning Qi is truly worthy, then it will not be too late to appoint him." "Not so," replied Duke Huan. "If we inquire about him, I fear that we will discover some minor flaw. To dismiss a man's great strengths on account of his minor flaws is precisely the reason why rulers lose the scholar knights of the world. As a general rule, what is heard will always be verified. Once something is heard, there is no need to inquire further, for you have already connected with what caused it to be so. Moreover, it is certainly difficult for men to be perfect. You should simply evaluate and use their strengths. In accordance with this principle, appoint them to office." Duke Huan understood this. 55 Therefore the Laozi says, "The way is great, heaven is great, earth is great, and the king is also great. Within the realm, there are four things that are great and the king counts as one." 56 These words mean that Duke Huan was able to embrace this principle. 12/109/1, 1012.15 When the great King Danfa 57 resided in Ben, the Di people attacked him. He offered them hides, silks, pearls, and jades, but they would not accept them and said, "What we, the Di people, want is your land. We will not accept these material goods as a substitute." The great King Danfa said to his subjects, "I cannot bear to reside with your elder brothers while leading your younger brothers to death, or to dwell with your fathers while causing your sons to die. You all must do your utmost to remain here. Does being my subject really differ from being the subject of the D people? Moreover, I have heard it said that you should not rely on the means by which you are nourished, i.e., the land, to harm those you nourish, i.e., a ruler's subjects. He left with his staff and whip, but his people led one another along and followed him. Subsequently, he re-established his state at the foot of Mount Chi. 58. It may be said of the great King Danfu that he was able to preserve life. When wealthy and eminent, he did not allow what nourished him to injure his person; when impoverished and humble, he did not allow what brought him material benefit to burden his physical form. Today, those who have received the rank and emoluments of their predecessor invariably consider losing them to be a serious matter. Life comes to us over a long period of time, yet we consider losing it a trivial matter. Is this not sheer folly? Therefore the Laozi says, those who value their person as if it were the world can be entrusted with the world. Those who cherish their person as if it were the world can be given custody of the world. 5912/109/12, 1912.16 Prince Mao of Zhongshan 60 said to Zanzi, although I dwell here secluded among the rivers and seas, my heart remains at the court of Wei. What can I do? Emphasize life, replied Zanzi. If you emphasize life, you will take material benefits lightly. Although I understand this principle, I still cannot achieve self-mastery, responded Prince Mao of Zhongshan. Zanzi continued, if you cannot achieve self-mastery, you must simply follow your inclinations. If you follow your inclinations, your spirit will be free from resentment. If you cannot achieve self-mastery and yet compel yourself not to follow your inclinations, it may be said that you injure yourself on two accounts. Those who injure themselves on two accounts cannot be included among those who are long-lived. 61 Therefore the Laozi says, knowing harmony is called constancy, knowing constancy is called clarity. Augmenting life is called auspiciousness. The mind directing the chi is called compulsion. 62 For this reason, use its brilliance and repeatedly return to its clarity. 6312/109/21, 2512.17 King Zhuang of Chu inquired about Zhan He, i.e., Zanzi, how should I bring order to my state? Zhan He replied, I, Zhan He, know how to order my person but know nothing of ordering the state. The king of Chu responded, I, the orphaned one, have inherited the shrines and temples of my ancestors and the altars to the soil and grain. I would like to learn how to preserve them. Zhan He replied, I have never heard of a ruler who brought order to his person yet found his state to be in disorder. I have never heard of a ruler whose person was disordered yet found his state to be ordered. Thus when the root of the matter rests with bringing order to your person, I would not presume to answer your query by speaking of the branches. The king of Chu exclaimed, excellent. 64 Therefore the Laozi says, cultivate it in your person, and your potency will be genuine. 6512/109/27, 3012.18 Duke Huan of Qi was reading in the upper part of his hall while wheelwright flat 66 was hewing a wheel in the lower part. Setting aside his hammer and chisel, the wheelwright asked Duke Huan, I venture to ask what books you are reading? The books of the sages, said the Duke. Are the sages still alive? They already are dead, said the Duke. Then what you are reading are merely the lees and dregs of the sages. Flushing in anger, Duke Huan replied, how dare you, a wheelwright, presume to criticize the books I am reading? If you can explain yourself, all right. If you cannot explain yourself, you shall die. Yes, I can explain. I will put it in terms of my occupation as a wheelwright, said wheelwright flat. If the blows of the mallet are too hard, the chisel will bite and not budge, if they are too gentle, the chisel will slide and not take hold. To make the chisel neither slide nor stick is something you can sense with your hand and feel with your heart. 67 Then you can get it down to the utmost subtlety. But I have not been able to teach it to my son, and my son has not been able to learn it from me. That's why I am an old man still hewing wheels after 60 years. Now what the sages have said contains some truth, but since they are dead and long gone, all that remains is the lees and dregs of their teachings. 68 Therefore the Laozi says, the way that can be spoken is not the constant way, the name that can be named is not the constant name. 6912/110/1, 812.19 Previously, when Sichenzihan acted as minister to the state of Song, he said to the Lord of Song, the danger or safety of the state and the orderliness or disorderliness of its people depend on how you execute rewards and punishments. Now the gifts of rank and reward are what the people love, these you should carry out personally. The punishments of execution and mutilation are what the people hate, may I ask that I administer them? The Lord of Song responded, excellent. I will enjoy the people's praises while you will suffer their resentments. This way I'll be sure to know how to avoid being the laughing stock of the lords of the land. The Lord of Song then carried out the rewards while Zihan implemented the punishments. When the people of the state came to understand that the regulations concerning executions and amputations rested solely with Zihan, the grand ministers of state treated him with affection, and the 100 surnames, i.e., the common people, feared him. Before a year had passed, Zihan had murdered the Lord of Song and usurped his government. 70 Therefore the Laozi says, the fish must not be allowed to leave the deep, the efficacious instruments of state must not be revealed to anyone. 7112/110/10, 1512.20 Royal Longevity was traveling with a bundle of books on his back when he bumped into Dignified Assent in Zhou. Dignified Assent remarked, affairs arise in response to alterations, and alterations are born of the times. Therefore those who understand timeliness are not constant in their actions. Books are the product of speech, and speech is the product of the knowledgeable. Therefore those who understand speech do not hoard books. 72 Upon hearing this, Royal Longevity made a bonfire of his books and danced about with joy. 73 Therefore the Laozi says, an excess of words leads to countless impoverishments, it cannot compare to preserving the center, i.e., the heart. 7412/110/17, 1912.21 Chief Ministers IPI 75 invited King Zhuang of Chu to a drinking party, and King Zhuang accepted his invitation. Zipi made the necessary preparations for the drinking party at Jiang 76 Terrace, but King Zhuang never arrived. The next morning Zipi arrived at the palace barefooted and bowed to King Zhuang. Facing north and standing at the front of his palace, Zipi addressed King Zhuang, earlier you agreed to come to my drinking party, but you never came. Was the reason that I committed some offense? King Zhuang replied, I heard that you were preparing to fete me at Jiang Terrace. Now Jiang Terrace to the south overlooks K Mountain, to the north approaches Fanghuan, to the east lies the Yangtze River, and to the west flows the Huai River. 77 The joy they bring causes men to forget their mortality. 78 A man of meager potency like me cannot deal with such joy. I feared that if I tarried there, I would be unable to return. Therefore the Laozi says, if you do not look at what you desire, you will make your heart free from turmoil. 7912/110/21, 2512.22 Prince Zhong'er of Jin was fleeing. When he passed through the state of Cao, the ruler of Cao failed to treat him according to the proper etiquette. 80 Shifuji's wife then said to Shifuji, 81 Our prince has failed to treat the prince of Jin with the proper etiquette. I have observed his followers. They all are worthy men. If they help him return to the state of Jin, he will certainly attack Cao. How could you fail to take the lead in augmenting his potency? Shifuji then provided Zhong'er with a calabash of food to which he added a jade disc. Zhong'er accepted the food but returned the jade disc. When he finally returned to his state, Zhong'er raised troops to attack the state of Cao. He vanquished Cao but forbade his 3 armies from entering the territory of Shifuji. 82 Therefore the Laozi says, contorted, you will become whole, bent, you will become upright. 8312/110/27, 12/111/212.23 The king of Wu, Gujian, battled with Wu but was not victorious. His capital city was demolished, and he was driven into exile. He was surrounded at Mount Kuiji. Though with indignant heart and rising gall, with chi like a gushing spring, his hand-picked, well-trained armored troops rushed into the conflagration as if determined to perish, defeated. Gujian requested that he serve as King Fuke of Wu's attendant and his wife serve as the king's concubine. Armed with a halberd, Gujian became the king's forward guard. 84 In the end, Gujian took the king of Wu captive at Gansui. 85 Therefore the Laozi says, the soft overcomes the hard, the weak overcomes the strong. Everyone in the world knows this, but no one can practice it. 86 The king of Wu personally practiced such principles. Consequently he became a hegemon over the central states. 12/111/4, 712.24 Viscount Jian of Zhao died and had not yet been buried when the people of Zongmu shifted their allegiance to the state of Qi. When Viscount Jian of Zhao had been buried for 5 days, Viscount Xiang his son raised troops to attack and encircle them. The encirclement was not yet complete, when a 100-foot 87 section of the city wall suddenly crumbled. Viscount Xiang then beat the gong and withdrew his troops. An official of his army remonstrated with him, saying, when you were punishing the crimes of Zongmu, its city walls crumbled. This is a sign that heaven supports us. Why, then, should we abandon the attack? Viscount Xiang replied, I heard that Shuxiang 88 once said, a superior man does not impose on others when they profit, nor does he attack others in distress. Let the people of Zongmu repair their walls. Only when the walls have been repaired, will we attack them. When the people of Zongmu heard of the Viscount's sense of justice, they asked to surrender. 89 Therefore the Laozi says, now, it is because he alone does not contend that no one can contend with him. 9012/111/9, 1312.25 Duke Mu of Qin addressed Bo Le saying, you are getting on in years. Is there anyone in your family who can take over for you and find me a good steed? Bo Le replied, a good horse may be judged by his physique, countenance, sinews, and bones. But in judging the best horse in the world, it seems as if it is not there at all, as if it has disappeared, as if it had lost its singular identity. A horse like that raises no dust and leaves no tracks. All my sons are lesser talents. They can judge a good horse, but they lack the talent to judge the best horse in the world. However, there is a man who is my porter and firewood gatherer who is called Nine-Cornered Hillock. In judging horses, he is not inferior to my abilities. I respectfully request that you grant him an audience. Duke Mu granted him an audience and commanded him to search out a fine steed. After 3 months Nine-Cornered Hillock returned and reported, the horse has been located. It is in Shakyu. Duke Mu replied, what kind of horse is it? It is a yellow mare, answered Nine-Cornered Hillock. Thereupon Duke Mu sent men to Shakyu to obtain the horse. The horse, however, turned out to be a black stallion. Duke Mu was quite displeased. Summoning Bo Le, he inquired of him saying, what a loss! The man you sent to find me a good steed cannot distinguish the color of one coat from another nor a female from a male, what could he possibly know about horses? Bo Le let out a long sigh and replied, it always comes to this. This is precisely why he surpasses me by 1,000 or 10,000-fold and is infinite in his capabilities. What Hillock observes is the dynamism of heaven. 91 He recognizes the refined essence and discards the dross. He focuses on the internal and disregards the external. He looks at what is to be seen and does not look at what is not to be seen. He scrutinizes what is to be scrutinized and disregards what is not to be scrutinized. It appears that what he has judged is a quality more precious than just a horse. The horse arrived and ultimately proved to be an excellent horse. 92 Therefore the Laozi says, great straightness is as if bent, great skill is as if clumsy. 9312/111/15, 2512.26 When Wu Qi was acting as chief minister of the state of Chu, he traveled to the state of Wei and asked Chu Yuju, 94 The king does not know how unworthy I am and has appointed me to be chief minister. Will you, sir, please test and evaluate my plan of action? Master Chu replied, what do you plan to do? Wu Qi answered, I plan to diminish the nobility of the state of Chu and equalize the system of official salaries, decreasing the salaries of those who receive too much and increasing the salaries of those who receive too little. I plan to train and drill the armored and foot soldiers so that when the opportune time arises, they will contend for advantage with everyone in the world. Master Chu responded, I, Yuju, have heard that in ancient times those who excelled at governing their states did not alter precedents nor change norms. Now you plan to diminish the nobility of the state of Chu and equalize the system of official salaries, decreasing the salaries of those who receive too much and increasing the salaries of those who receive too little. This is to alter precedents and change norms. If you do this, it will not bring benefit. I, Yuju, have also heard it said, anger is contrary to potency, weapons are ill-augured instruments, and fighting is something that human beings will always avoid. Now you secretly conspire to oppose potency, are fond of using ill-augured instruments, and practice what others would avoid. This is the height of perversity. Moreover, it is not proper for you to employ the troops of Lu to realize your ambitions in Qi, and yet you do so. It is not proper for you to employ the troops of Wei to realize your ambitions in Qin, and yet you do so. I have further heard that if you do not harm others, then you will not bring harm on yourself. I have certainly suspected that my king has repeatedly opposed the way of heaven and perverted the principles of humankind. Yet, until today he has avoided harm. Oh, he must have been waiting for you. Wu Qi responded in alarm, is it still possible to change? Master Chu replied, when one has already committed the crime, it is impossible to change the outcome. It would be best if you loved with sincerity and acted with genuineness. Therefore the Laozi says, blunt the sharpness, untangle the knots, soften the glare, be as dust. 9512/112/1, 1112.27 When the state of Jin attacked the state of Chu, the Jin forces advanced 3 stages without stopping. 96 The Grand Ministers of Chu asked the king's permission to counterattack. King Zhuang responded, when the former lords ruled Chu, Jin did not attack Chu. It is only during my reign that Jin has attacked Chu. I am to blame for this. How could I attach this disgrace to my Grand Ministers? The Grand Ministers answered, when the former ministers took up their posts, Jin did not attack Chu. It is only since we have served as ministers that Jin has attacked Chu. Your ministers are to blame for this. We implore your majesty to counterattack. King Zhuang bowed his head and burst into tears, soaking his collar. When he raised his head, he saluted his grand ministers. When the people of Jin heard of this incident, they said, the ruler and his ministers vied to take responsibility for their mistakes. Moreover, the ruler of Chu humbled himself before his ministers. We could not possibly attack such a state. That evening the Jin troops retreated and returned home. Therefore the Laozi says, one who can accept the humiliation of his state may be called the lord of the altars of soil and grain. 9712/112/13, 1712.28 During the reign of Duke Jing of Song, 98 When Mars was in the lunar lodge heart. 99 The Duke became fearful and summoned Ziwei 100 to question him, saying, Mars is in heart. What does it mean? Ziwei responded, Mars corresponds to the heavenly executioner, the lunar lodge heart corresponds to the territory of Song. Disaster awaits you. Nonetheless it is possible to shift the blame to the Prime Minister. The Duke replied, the Prime Minister is entrusted with governing the state. If the blame is shifted to him and he is put to death, it would be unlucky. I request to take the onus on myself. You can shift the blame to the people, Zi Wei stated. The Duke responded, if the people die, for whom would I act as Lord? It would be better if I were the only one to die. Zi Wei responded, then you can shift the blame to the harvest. 101 The Duke retorted, the harvest is the people's life. If there were a famine due to the harvest, then the people would surely die. I am the people's Lord. If I wanted to kill my people in order to survive, who would consider me a true Lord? My life has certainly reached its end. Zi Wei, speak no more. Zi Wei turned to go. Facing north 102 he bowed twice and said, I dare to congratulate you. Even though heaven dwells on high, heaven hears what lies below. You have spoken as a true Lord on 3 occasions, so heaven will certainly reward you 3 times. This evening Mars will surely travel through 3 lunar lodges, 103 signaling that you will extend your life by 21 years. The Duke responded, how is it that you know this to be the case? Zi Wei replied, you have spoken as a true Lord on 3 occasions. Therefore, you will be rewarded 3 times. Mars will surely travel through 3 lunar lodges. Each lodge traverses 7 stars. Each movement of Mars corresponds to 1 year. 3 lunar lodges through which Mars will move times 7 stars for each lodge equals 21. Thus, I stated that you would extend your life by 21 years. I beg to be allowed to kneel at your throne and wait. If Mars does not shift its location, I request the death penalty. The Duke responded, it is allowed. That very night Mars did, in fact, pass through 3 lunar lodges. 104 Therefore the Laozi says, one who can accept the misfortunes of his state may be called a king of the world. 105 12/112/19, 12/113/312.29 In former times, when Gongsun Long resided in Zhao, he said to one of his disciples, if a person has no ability, I have no interest in keeping company with him. A guest, clad in coarse cloth with only a rope for a belt, received an audience with Gongsun Long and said, I can shout. Gongsun Long turned to his disciples and asked, among my disciples is there already one who can shout? The disciples all replied, there is not. Gongsun Long responded, register him as a disciple. Several days had passed when Gongsun Long was on his way to present a persuasion to the king of Yan. When they arrived at the bank of the Yellow River, a ferry rested on the opposite shore. He then directed the disciple who was good at shouting to call the ferry. When he did, the ferry promptly arrived. Thus when sages dwell in the world, they do not disregard knights who possess specific talents. Therefore the Laozi says, among men to abandon no one, among things to abandon no thing, this is called embracing clarity. 106 12/113/5, 912.30 The Chu general Zifa attacked and defeated the state of Cai. King Xian of Chu 107 traveled to the suburbs to welcome Zifa when he returned. He presented him with 100 Qing of land 108 and enfeoffed him as holder of the jade baton. 109 Zifa, however, declined to accept these honors, saying, governing a state and setting it in order so that the lords of the land will come as guests to offer their submission is due to the potency of the ruler. Issuing commands and handing down orders so that, even before your troops assemble, the enemy is routed, is due to the awesomeness of the general. Arraying your troops in battle order and achieving victory over the enemy is due to the strength of the common people. Taking advantage of the people's achievements and efforts to secure rank and emoluments for oneself is not the way of humaneness and rightness. Thus I decline to accept the rewards offered me. 110 Therefore the Laozi says, succeed but do not dwell in it. It is only by not dwelling in it that success is not erased. 111 12/113/11, 1412.31 When Duke Wen of Jin attacked the city of Yuan, he agreed with his grand ministers on a period of 3 days to capture the city. When 3 days passed and Yuan did not surrender, Duke Wen ordered a retreat. A military officer said, Yuan is sure to surrender in another day or two. The ruler responded, I did not realize that it would not be possible to defeat Yuan in 3 days, and so agreed with the grand ministers on a period of 3 days to capture the city of Yuan. Now if we do not end this campaign, even though the designated time has elapsed, it would mean forfeiting my trustworthiness to obtain Yuan. I will not do it. When the people of Yuan heard about this, they said, with a ruler like this, how could we refuse to surrender? They promptly surrendered. When the people of Wen heard about this, they also asked to surrender. 112 Therefore the Laozi says, how dim, how obscure. Yet within it is the quintessence. This essence is profoundly genuine, for what lies within is trustworthy. 113 Therefore beautiful words can buy honor, but beautiful deeds can raise a man above others. 114 12/113/16, 2012.32 Gongai Aishiu, 115 The Prime Minister of Liu had an insatiable craving for fish. Although everyone in the state presented him with fish, Gongai Aishiu did not accept them. His disciple asked him about it, saying, Master, you always crave fish. Why, then, do you never accept these gifts of fish? He responded, it is because I always crave fish that I do not accept the fish. If I accept the fish and am thereby dismissed from my post as minister, although I always crave fish, I will not be able to provide myself with fish. If I do not accept the fish and avoid being dismissed from office, then I will be able to supply myself with fish for a long time to come. This is a case of discerning the difference between acting for others and acting for oneself. 116 Therefore the Laozi says, sages put themselves last and so come first, treat themselves as extraneous and so are preserved. Is it not because they are selfless that they are able to accomplish their private ends? 117 Another passage states, know contentment and you will not be humiliated. 118 12/113/22, 26 12.33 An elderly man named Hu Chiu said to Sun Chuao, there are 3 things people resent. Do you know what they are? Sun Chuao responded, what do you mean? Hu Chiu replied, if your rank is high, those of low rank will envy you, if your post is great, the ruler will detest you, if your salary is substantial, resentment will crop up everywhere. Sun Chuao commented, the higher my rank, the humbler my ambitions, the greater my post. The smaller my desires, the more substantial my salary, the more widespread my charity. If I rely on these things to avoid the 3 resentments, will that do? 119 Therefore the Laozi says, the superior must have the inferior as its root, the high must have the low as its base. 120 12/113/28, 12/114/3 The forger of battle hooks 121 For the minister of war was already 80 years old but had not lost the sharp edge of his battle hooks. The minister of war asked him, is it just a matter of skill? Or do you possess the way? He replied, it is that I have something to which I hold exclusively. By the time I was 20, I already liked to forge hooks. I did not look at anything else. If it was not a hook, I did not pay any attention to it. Thus using something must depend on not using something, and in this way its usefulness is maintained. This is even truer if there is nothing that one does not use. Which things, then, would not be equal to all other things. Therefore the Laozi says, those who manage their affairs according to the way identify with the way. 122 12/114/5, 812.35 King Wen tempered his moral potency and consolidated his government so that within 3 years, 2/3 of the world submitted to his rule. The tyrant Zhao learned of this and grew fearful, saying, rising early and retiring late, I strive to compete with him and so exhaust my mind and weary my body. Yet if I relax my vigilance, I fear that he will attack me. Marquis Hu of Chang 123 replied, Earl Chang of Zhou i.e., King Wen is humane and just and is good at strategizing, his heir apparent, Ji Fa, is courageous and resolute and knows nothing of indecision, and his younger son Ji Dan is reverent and frugal and understands timeliness. If you allow them to go on as they have, then you will not be able to sustain the calamities they will bring, and if you relax your vigilance and pardon them, you will also surely suffer misfortune. Even though a hat may be worn out, the only place you can put it is on your head. 124 I implore you to devise a plan before King Wen has consolidated his power. Subsequently Chu Shang 125 held King Wen at Yali. After King Wen was captured, San Yishan 126 expended thousands of catties of gold to seek out and obtain the most precious items and rare forms of animals in the world as ransom, the fabulous Zanjiao tiger and Jizzy chicken, 100 pieces of black jade, 100 large cowrie shells, a black panther, a yellow bear, a black moose, and 1,000 mottled white tiger skins. He presented these gifts to Zhao, relying on Fei Zhong 127 to act as an intermediary. When Zhao cast his eyes on them, he was elated and released King Wen, killing and sacrificing an ox and presenting it to him. When King Wen returned to his state, he made a show of changing his ways by constructing gates carved in jade, building lingteras, consorting with his concubines, and amusing himself with the music of the bronze drums, all the while waiting for Zhao to slip up. When Zhao learned of King Wen's behavior, he declared, Earl Chang of Zhou has modified his ways and changed his behavior. My worries are over. Subsequently Zhao engaged in such nefarious conduct as creating the roasting beam, 128 cutting out Bai Gan's heart, slicing open the wombs of pregnant women, and executing those who dared to disagree with him. It was then that King Wen implemented his plan and defeated Zhao. Therefore the Laozi says, no honor but accept humiliation and be a valley to the world. 129 12/114/10, 1812.36 King Cheng 130 questioned Yin Yi 131 about governing. What kind of virtuous conduct will inspire the people to feel affection for their ruler? He asked. Yin Yi replied, employ them according to the proper seasons. Treat them with respect and compliance. King Cheng inquired, to what extent should one practice such things? Yin Yi responded, practice them as if you were facing a deep abyss or treading on thin ice. 132 King Cheng said, how frightening to be a king. Yin Yi replied, those between heaven and earth and within the four seas who are good are loved by the people, those who are not good are despised by the people. In ancient times, the subjects of the Shang and Xia reversed their allegiances, they came to despise the tyrants Ji and Zhao and submitted to the rulership of kings Tang and Wu. The people of Susha all took it upon themselves to attack their lord and shift their allegiance to the divine farmer. Such things are well understood in our age. How could you not be frightened? Therefore the Laozi says, what others fear you also must fear. 133 12/114/20, 24 12.37 One of Robert Ji's followers asked him, do even thieves possess the way? Robert Ji replied, would it be fitting for a thief not to possess the way? To surmise where the goods are hidden is sagacity, to enter first is courage, to leave last is rightness, to share the spoils equitably is humaneness, and to know what actions are well advised or ill advised is wisdom. There is no one in the world capable of becoming a great thief without completely mastering these 5 things. From this perspective, it is evident that even those who possess a heart bent on thievery must rely on the way of the sage before realizing their intentions. 134 Therefore the Laozi says, exterminate sagacity, abandon wisdom, and the people will benefit 100-fold. 135 12/114/26, 29 12.38 Ziffa, the general of the Chu army, was fond of seeking out knights skilled in the way. A person from Chu who was an outstanding thief went to see Ziffa and said, I have heard that you are seeking out knights skilled in the way. I am a petty thief of the Chu markets. I want to offer my talents and become one of your soldiers. Upon hearing these words, clothes unfastened and hat askew, 136 Ziffa rushed out to meet the man and pay him his respects. Ziffa's assistants remonstrated with him saying, "This thief is known to everyone. How can you pay him such respect?" He responded, "This is not something that you can understand." Shortly thereafter, the state of Qi raised troops and attacked the state of Chu. Ziffa led his troops to repulse Qi but 3 times retreated in defeat. The worthy and incorruptible ministers of Chu all made full use of their best plans and most sincere efforts to repulse Qi, and yet the Qi forces daily grew more powerful. The petty thief of the markets then presented himself and implored Ziffa saying, "I request to serve you by practicing my meager skills." Ziffa replied, "You may." Without asking the thief to explain himself, Ziffa sent him off. The thief departed, and in the dark of the night stole the curtain belonging to the Qi general and presented it to Ziffa. Ziffa subsequently ordered it returned to the Qi general, saying, "When my troops were out gathering brush for their fire, they came upon your curtain, so I have directed them to return it to their owner." The next evening, the thief once again made his way toward the Qi general. This time absconding with his pillow. Ziffa again ordered someone to return it. The following evening, once again, the thief made his way to the Qi general, this time taking his hairpin. Once again Ziffa had the item returned to him. When the Qi troops learned of this, they were greatly alarmed. The general and his officers then took counsel together, saying, "If we do not depart today, I fear the Chu troops will take our heads." The general commanded his army to turn around, and the army promptly departed. Thus, there are no petty skills and there are no insignificant abilities, it all depends on how the ruler uses them. Therefore the Lao Tzu says, "Do not praise the person, praise the substance of the person." 137-12/115/1, 1012.39 I am making progress, said Yan Hui. "What do you mean?" asked Confucius. "I have forgotten rites and music." "Not bad, but you still haven't got it." Yan Hui saw Confucius again on another day and said, "I am making progress." "What do you mean?" "I have forgotten humaneness and rightness." "Not bad, but you still haven't got it." Yan Hui saw Confucius again on another day and said, "I sit and forget." "What do you mean sit and forget?" Confucius asked with surprise. "I slough off my limbs and trunk," said Yan Hui, "dim my intelligence, depart from my form, leave knowledge behind, and immerse myself in the conduits of transformation. This is what I mean by sit and forget." "If you are immersed," said Confucius, "then you have no preferences. If you are transformed, then you have no more constants. It is you who is really the worthy one. Please permit me to follow after you." 138 Therefore the Lao Tzu says, when nourishing your ethereal soul and embracing the One, can you not let them go? In concentrating your qi and attaining softness, can you be like an infant? 139 12/115/12, 1712.40 Duke Mu of Qin raised an army and was about to launch a surprise attack on the state of Zhen when Jianshu 140 said to him, "You cannot do that. I have heard that when one launches a surprise attack on a state, chariots should go no farther than 100 li and foot soldiers no farther than 30 li, for confined to these distances, plans will not yet be leaked, armored soldiers will not yet lose their acuity, provisions will not yet be depleted, and people will not yet give up in exhaustion. This is because they reach the peak of their vigor and the pinnacle of their strength. This is the way to repulse the enemy and fill them with awe. Now if you send troops several thousand li and cross the territory of the lords of the land several times to launch a surprise attack on the state of Zhen, I doubt you will succeed. You should rethink your plans." Duke Mu did not heed Jianshu's advice. Jianshu bid the army farewell, rending his garments and weeping as if in mourning. The army departed, passed Zhou, and proceeded eastward. A merchant of Zhen named Xian Gao, feigning that he was acting on the orders of the Earl of Zhen, prepared 12 head of oxen to provide sustenance for the Qin army and played host to them at a banquet. The 3 generals of the Qin army were frightened and, speaking among themselves, said, "Even though we have traveled several thousand li to launch this surprise attack, the people of Zhen knew about us before we even arrived at our destination. They must already be fully prepared for us. We cannot possibly proceed with the attack." The generals commanded their armies to turn around and left promptly. 141 During this same time, Duke Wen of Jin died en route and had not yet been buried when Xian Zhen advised Duke Xiang. 142 In the past, when our former ruler communicated with Duke Mu, everyone in the world heeded it and all the lords of the land took note of it. Now our ruler has died and has not yet been buried. Duke Mu neither condoled us in mourning nor asked permission to have free passage across our territory, considering that our ruler was dead and that our orphan, i.e., the newly enthroned heir, was weak. I asked that we attack him. Duke Xiang assented. Xian Zhen 143 led his troops to Mount Xian, where he attacked the Qin army and defeated it soundly. He captured their 3 commanders and brought them back to Jin. When Duke Mu of Qin learned of the defeat, he clothed himself in mourning garb and paid a visit to the ancestral temple to announce the defeat to the multitudes of his ancestors. 144 Therefore the Laozi says, "To know that you do not know is best, to not know but think you know is a disease." 145 12/115/19, 28 12.41 The queen consort of the king of Qi died. The king wanted to appoint a new queen consort but had not yet decided who it would be, so he directed his ministers to deliberate the issue. The Duke of Shui, 146 hoping to discover the king's choice, presented him with 10 pairs of earrings, one of which was especially beautiful. The next morning he asked about the whereabouts of the most beautiful pair of earrings and urged that the woman who now had them should be appointed queen consort. The king of Qi was delighted by this and thereafter respected and valued the Duke of Shui even more. Thus, if the intentions and desires of the Lord are visible on the outside, he will fall subject to the control of his subjects. Therefore the Laozi says, "Block the openings, shut the doors, and all your life you will not labor." 147 12/116/1, 312.42 When Luo 148 roamed around the northern sea, having passed through Great Yin, 149 he entered Dark Gate and arrived at the top of Hidden Valley. 150 There he saw a gentleman with deep-set eyes and abundant dark hair, an ample neck and hawk-like shoulders, corpulent above and cadaverous below, who was spinning round and round as if welcoming the winds in dance. When the man turned around and saw Luo, he slowly lowered his arms and ran away to hide himself in the shadow of a large rock. Luo pursued him, and when his eyes once again fell on the gentleman, he found him perched on a tortoise shell eating a clam. Luo then addressed him, saying, "I have turned my back on my companions and left my associates to see all that lies beyond the realm of the 6 coordinates. There has never been a wanderer like me, don't you think? When I was young I loved to wander, and when I grew to adulthood I never lost my love of wandering. I wandered to the farthest extremes of the 4 directions 151 but had never seen northern Yin. Now, unexpectedly, I find a son of heaven in this place. Could we strike up a friendship?" It appeared that the gentleman grinned and laughed, saying, "Oh, my! You are one of those folk from the central continent. It is not true that you have come all that far to get here. Here, too, we are illuminated by the sun and moon and blanketed by the arrayed stars. It is where the yin and yang circulate and where the 4 seasons emerge. Compared with the places that are nameless and vast, where we are here is just like the front corners of a house. One such as I to the south, I wander to the wilderness of Wanliang Penumbra, 152 to the north, I rest in the countryside of Chinmu Sunken Tomb, to the west, I go as far as the hamlet of Yaming Deep Obscurity, to the east, I close myself up within Hongmen profound mist. In such places, no earth lies below, no heaven spreads above. You listen but do not hear, you look but do not see. Beyond that place is something rather like a cleansing, encircling stream. Beyond that, there are perhaps another 1,000 or 10,000 li, but I have not been able to go there. Now you, sir, have traveled here and announced that you have seen everything there is to see. Have you really come all that far? Nonetheless, stay if you would like, but I have already arranged to meet vast waters beyond the 9 limits, so I cannot remain here for long. Then it appeared that the gentleman lifted his arms, raised his body, and flew off into the clouds. Luo looked upward to gaze after him but did not see him. He then stopped his horse, his mind unsettled. Perplexed and at a loss, he said, if I compare myself to this man, it will be like comparing a worm to a swan. All day long the worm crawls just to go no farther than a few inches, but it seems like a long way to him. How lamentable is that? Therefore the Zhuangzi says, a few years are not as good as many years, small knowledge is not as good as great knowledge. The morning mushroom knows nothing of dusk and dawn, the cicadan knows nothing of spring and fall. 153 That is, even clarity cannot discern everything. 12/116/5, 1912.43 Mitzi 154 had governed Shanfu for 3 years when Wumachi 155 changed his appearance by wearing tattered clothes and a short hemp jacket so that he could secretly observe what transformations had taken place there. He saw a night fisherman catch a fish and let it go. Wumachi asked him, "You, sir, being a fisherman, want to catch fish. Why then do you catch them and let them go?" The fisherman replied, "Mitzi does not want us to catch small fish. Since all the fish I caught were small ones, I let them go." Wumachi returned home and reported his findings to Confucius. Mitzi is the most morally potent of all. He is able to inspire people to conduct themselves in the dark of the night as if they were facing a strict punishment for their actions. How is Master Mi able to achieve such things? Confucius replied, Chiu, once asked him about governing. He replied, sincerity in this takes shape in that. Mitzi must be practicing this technique. 156 Therefore the Laozi says, he discards that and takes this. 157 12/116/21, 28 12.44 Penumbra asked Shadow, 158 Is the brilliance of the sunlight spirit illumination? No, it is not, replied Shadow. How do you know that? Queried Penumbra. Shadow replied, when the fusang tree falls into darkness, 159 The sun illuminates the universe, the radiance of its light illuminating all within the 4 seas. But if you shut your doors and close your windows, it has no means to enter your home. If it were spirit illumination, it would flow to the 4 directions as far as they reach, and there would be nowhere to which it did not extend, above, delimiting heaven, below, encircling earth. It would transform and nourish the myriad things, and yet it could not be construed as having any particular appearance. In the twinkling of an eye, it would embrace all that lies beyond the 4 seas. How could the brilliance of the sunlight be sufficient to denote spirit illumination? Therefore the Laozi says, the softest thing in the world rides roughshod over the hardest thing in the world. 160 12/117/1, 412.45 Resplendent light asked nothing there, Master, is there really something there, or is there really nothing there? Nothing there did not respond. Not getting an answer to his question, Resplendent light looked intently at the other's sunken, hollow, appearance. He looked for him but did not see his form, listened for him but did not hear his voice, groped for him but could not grasp him, gazed after him but could not reach him. How superb! Said Resplendent light. Who could achieve this state? I am able to be without something, but I am not yet able to be without nothing. When it comes to being without nothing, What then would one follow to arrive at this state? 161 Therefore the Laozi says, nothing there enters where there is no space. This is how I know that non-action brings benefit. 162 12/117/610 12.46 Preoccupied with thoughts of rebellion. 163 Duke Sheng of Bo left the court and was standing alone when he picked up a riding crop upside down and pierced his chin. Even though his blood flowed all over the ground, he was not conscious of it. When a person from Zhen learned of this, he said, if you forget your chin, what won't you forget? That is, if your quintessential spirit overflows outside, your knowledge and forethought will waste away inside, and you will not be able to regulate your body in a measured fashion. For this reason, the more distant the location in which the spirit is employed, the closer will be the things that are lost. 164 Therefore the Laozi says, do not go out your door, thereby know the whole world, do not peer out your window, thereby know the way of heaven. The farther you go, the less you know. 165 This is what is meant here. 12/117/12, 1512.47 When the first emperor of Qin 166 conquered the world, he feared that he would not be able to defend it. Thus, he attacked the wrong border tribes, repaired the Great Wall, constructed passes and bridges, erected barricades and barriers, equipped himself with post stations and charioteers, and dispatched troops to guard the borders of his empire. When, however, the house of Liu took possession of the world, it was as easy as turning a weight in the palm of your hand. In ancient times, King Wu attacked and vanquished tyrant Zhao at Mui. He then erected a tumulus at the grave of Bai Gan, hung his banner over the palace gate of Shangrong, erected a fence to protect the home of Jitsi, paid his respects at the ancestral temple of Chentang, distributed the grain in the Jukiao granary, and dispersed the wealth in the deer pavilion. 167 He destroyed the war drums and drumsticks. He unbent his bows and cut their strings. He moved out of his palace and lived exposed to the wilds to demonstrate that life would be peaceful and simple. He laid down his waist sword and took up the breast tablet to demonstrate that he was free of enmity. As a consequence of King Wu's actions, the entire world sang his praises and rejoiced in his rule while the lords of the land came bearing gifts of silk and seeking audiences with him. His dynasty endured for 34 generations without interruption. Therefore the Laozi says, those good at shutting use no bolts, yet what they shut cannot be opened, those good at tying use no cords, yet what they tie cannot be unfastened. 168 12/117/17, 21 12.48 Yen Ru 169 was studying charioteering, but 3 years passed and he had not yet mastered it. He was so troubled and grieved by this that when he slept, his thoughts often drifted to charioteering. Once in the middle of the night he dreamed that he received instruction in autumn driving 170 from his teacher. The next morning he visited his teacher, who looked at him and said, "It is not that I have been withholding my way from you, it is just that I feared you were not capable of receiving my instruction. Today I will instruct you in autumn driving." Yen Ru turned around to take his leave, facing north he bowed twice and replied, "I have enjoyed heaven's good fortune. This past evening I already received such instruction in my dreams." 171 Therefore the Laozi says, "I do my utmost to attain emptiness, I hold firmly to stillness. The 10,000 things act in succession, and I observe their reversions." 172 12/117/22, 26 12.49 In the days of old, Sun Chuao thrice rose to the position of prime minister but felt no joy because of it, and thrice he left the office but felt no anxiety over it. The people of Wu wanted Jitsi of Yanling to be their king, but he would not accept. Suyu was given the empire, but he would not accept it. Master Yanying made a covenant with Kui Shu, and even though he faced death, he did not seek to alter his obligations. In every case, these men possessed far-reaching understanding. their quintessential spirit plumbed the distinction between death and life, how then could worldly things delude them? 173 There was a person from Jing i.e., Chu named Si Fei who obtained a precious sword at Gansui. 174 On his way home, he crossed the Yangtze River. When he was in midstream, a massive wave arose, and two scaly dragons pressed in on his boat and coiled around it. Si Fei asked the boatman, "When you encountered these dragons before, how did you survive?" The boatman responded, "I have never seen them before." Thereupon Si Fei laid bare his arms and drew his sword, declaring, "A courageous knight can be persuaded by humaneness and rightness, but he cannot be intimidated by force." 175 On behalf of this rotten flesh and putrid bones floating in the river, if I were to give up my sword to preserve myself whole, what more would I have to cherish? Si Fei then jumped into the river and beheaded the dragons. The passengers survived, and the waves subsided. The king of Jing rewarded Si Fei by making him holder of the jade baton. When Confucius learned about Si Fei's exploits, he commented, "Excellent, indeed. To not discard a sword on behalf of rotten flesh and putrid bones, does not this say it all about Si Fei?" Therefore the Laozi says, "Only those who do not act for the sake of life are worthier than those who value life." 176 12/117/28, 12/118/812.50 Chinyukun, 177 A person from Qi offered a persuasion to the king of Wei on the merits of joining the vertical alliance. The king of Wei found it convincing, so he gave him 10 chariots and ordered him to proceed to Jingchu. When Chinyukun was about to take his leave, he had second thoughts about the merits of joining the vertical alliance and so again offered a persuasion, this time regarding the merits of joining the horizontal alliance. Chinyukun then took his leave as before, but the king of Wei halted his expedition and distanced himself from Chinyukun. In both his failing to realize his ambitions concerning the vertical alliance and his being unable to complete the task of persuading the king to join the horizontal alliance, the reason was constant. Now words have an ancestor, and affairs have a root. If you lose sight of them, even if you possess much skill and capability, it would be better if you possessed less. For this reason, when Chui is depicted on the Zhou tripods, he is shown chewing his fingers because the former kings hoped to illustrate that excessive skill should not be practiced. 178 Therefore the Shenzi says, "A craftsman who knows how to make a door that can only stay open does not truly know about making doors. He must be able to make them close. Only then does he know how to make doors." 179 12/118/10, 1512.51 A Mahist named Tianzhu 180 wished to have an audience with King Hui of Qin. He readied his chariot and aligned his wheels, but after remaining in Qin for 3 years, he still had not seen the king. A certain retainer spoke to the king of Chu on Tianzhu's behalf, and consequently Tianzhu traveled to Chu and had an audience with the king. The king of Chu was delighted with Tianzhu, so he bestowed on him the tally of the general of the army and sent him off to Qin. When he arrived in Qin with his tally, he obtained an audience with King Hui of Qin and offered him a persuasion. When he left the king and was on his way to his lodging, Tianzhu let out a long sigh and remarked to one of his followers, "I remained in Qin for 3 years and did not obtain an audience. I did not realize that the path to Qin would be through the state of Chu. There definitely are some things that are near but are put far away, and some things that are far away but are brought near." 181 Thus, the movements of a great man cannot be marked out with the straightness of a marking cord, he arrives at his objective, that is all. This is what the Guanzi means when it says, "The flight of birds is like the level and marking cord." 182 12/118/17, 2112.52 The waters of Fen River are 1,000 ren 183 deep, yet it takes in no dirt or dust. Toss a metal needle into the deep waters, and the needle will remain visible. It is not that the water is not deep, it is that the water is clear, so that fish, turtles, dragons, and snakes are not willing to make their home there. Similarly, the 5 grains will not grow on top of stones and boulders, and deer will not roam on bare mountains, for they have no place in which they can hide and find shelter. 184 In ancient times Viscount Wen of Zhao 185 asked Xuxiang, 186 Among the 6 hereditary generals of the armies of Jin, 187 Who will be the first to perish? Xuxiang replied, the generals of the Zhonghang and Ji clans. Viscount Wen asked, what? Xuxiang answered, in administering the affairs of government, they consider cruelty to be scrutiny, severity to be discernment, treating their subordinates harshly to be loyalty to their lord, and devising numerous stratagems to be meritorious. They may be compared to stretching hide. If you stretch it, the hide will grow larger, but enlarging the hide is also the way to rupture it. Therefore the Laozi says, when the government is muddled, the people are simple. When the government is alert, the people are cunning. 188 12/118/21, 29 12.53 Duke Jing of Qi said to the chief prognosticator, what can you accomplish with your way? He replied, I can move the earth. When Yanzi went to have an audience with Duke Jing, the Duke said to him, I asked the chief prognosticator what he could accomplish with his way. He replied that he could move the earth. Is it really possible to move the earth? Yanzi was silent and did not respond. After he left Duke Jing, he went to see the chief prognosticator and said to him, earlier I observed a comet between the lunar lodge's room and heart. Is there about to be an earthquake? There will be, said the chief prognosticator. After Yanzi left, the chief prognosticator had an audience with Duke Jing in which he said, I cannot move the earth, but the earth will definitely move. When Tianziang 189 heard this, he commented, when Yanzi chose to remain silent and not speak, it was because he did not want to see the chief prognosticator. When Yanzi sought an interview with the chief prognosticator, it was because he feared that the Duke would be deceived. It may be said of Yanzi that he was loyal toward his superiors and generous toward his subordinates. 190 Therefore the Laozi says, the sage is square-edged but does not scrape, has corners but does not jab. 191 12/119/1, 612.54 Marquis Wen of Wei 192 feasted his grand ministers at Qiang. When they had drunk enough wine to become inebriated, Marquis Wen sighed deeply and exclaimed, I, alone, lack a minister like you Rang. Jian Zhong 193 raised a cup and approached him saying, please, drink a cup as a forfeit. The Lord responded, what? Jian Zhong answered, I have learned that those who follow their true destinies as mothers and fathers know nothing of the filial son, while the ruler possessed of the way knows nothing of the loyal minister. Besides, what became of Yu Rang's ruler? Marquis Wen accepted the cup and drank it. When he had drained the goblet, he replied, if one lacks ministers like Guanzhong and Baoshu, 194 then one gets the meritorious service of a Yu Rang. 195 Therefore the Laozi says, when the state is confused and chaotic, there are loyal ministers. 196 12/119/8, 12:12.55 Master Kong 197 was paying a visit to the temple of Duke Huan 198 when he happened to catch sight of a vessel called a warning vessel. How wonderful to have caught sight of such a vessel! Master Kong exclaimed in delight. He turned his head around toward his disciples and called out, disciples, fetch some water. When they brought the water, Master Kong poured it into the vessel. When the vessel was half full, it remained upright, but when Master Kong filled it completely, it toppled over on its side. Suddenly Master Kong's expression changed, and he exclaimed, how splendid to grasp the significance of fullness. Standing at the Master's side, Zigong said, please, what does it mean to grasp the significance of fullness? What increases will decrease, replied Master Kong. What does that mean? Asked Zigong. Master Kong replied, things prosper then decline. Joy reaches its utmost then becomes sorrow. The sun reaches its apogee then shifts. The moon reaches its fullness then begins to wane. This is why the perceptive and wise preserve themselves with stupidity, the learned and eloquent preserve themselves with restraint, the martial and courageous preserve themselves with timidity, the wealthy and powerful preserve themselves with frugality, and those whose potency operates throughout the world preserve themselves with docility. These 5 things are the means by which the former kings defended their empires without losing them. If you oppose these 5 things, you will always be endangered. 199 Therefore the Laozi says, if you submit to the way, you will not want to be full. It is because he is not full that he can be worn and yet newly made. 212/119/14, 2012.56 King Wu asked the Grand Duke, if I attack the tyrant Zhao, the world will consider that a subject has murdered his lord and a subordinate has attacked his superior. I fear that later generations will employ their troops incessantly and will struggle with one another unceasingly. What can I do about this? The Grand Duke replied, the king's question is excellent indeed. Those who have not yet caught their prey fear the wound will be too small. But once they have caught it, they fear the wound is so large as to spoil much of the meat. If the king persistently wants to hold on to the empire, then block up the people's senses. Guide them all into useless occupations and pointless teachings. When they all rejoice in their respective callings and are at ease with their emotions, those who are bright and shining will lead those who are still dark and obscure. Then, and only then, discard their helmets and adorn their heads with caps of duck feather, unfasten their waist swords, and direct them to carry breast tablets. Establish 3 years of mourning, directing the mourning clothes to be simple. Elevate and praise those who are modest and retiring so that the people will not compete with one another. Use wine and meat to communicate with them, the music of the mouth organ and the cheen to amuse them, and ghosts and spirits to intimidate them. Next employ sumptuous ornamentation and opaque ritual to obscure their inner substance. Enhance funerals and extend mourning periods to make their households sincere. With pearls for the mouths of the deceased, fish scales of jade for their clothing, and silken thread and cords bind their bodies, you will deplete their resources. With tombs that have been chiseled deep with ornamentation and tumuli that have been mounded high above the earth, you will use up their strength. When the families are impoverished and the clans have decreased, your worries and anxieties will be few. If you employ these methods to modify customary practices, then you will be able to maintain the empire without losing it. Therefore the Laozi says, after they are transformed, should they want to act, I shall suppress them with the nameless uncarved block. 201/12/119/22, 29